This week on The Capitalist Investor, we talk about Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, and how his principles can be applied to the AI revolution. All right, we got a special guest back this week, Dave Abate. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Summer's here finally here in Cleveland, so excited.
Absolutely. Got a little Father's Day in last weekend. I did a little smoking, a little barbecuing. So pretty nice weekend. How about you?
So got to relax a little bit, spend some time with the family. We headed out to a nice buffet.
Nice.
For Father's Day. It was probably ate more than I wanted to, but it all worked out.
Nice. Yeah, it's hard to pass up a good breakfast buffet, honestly. It's one of my favorite things out there. You know, they're when we go to Disney, you know how they have those like character breakfasts that are, you know, $9,000 per person. I make it a point to try to make up some of that money by eating as many Mickey waffles as I can.
Exactly.
And they're so good. So, all right. Well, hey, we got a good topic this week. Obviously, a lot going on in the world and in the markets. But, you know, we talk about current events all the time. So I thought this was pretty interesting as well and topical. Because, you know, as an advisor, Warren Buffett's name comes up all the time, all the time. Even more so, you know, even a few years back when I was doing more of those kind of college classes that we talked, or that we taught, I should say. So it is interesting to basically, you know, kind of figure out or talk about the principles that Warren Buffett has used through the years to be so successful, and how, you know, basically AI can, you know, use those principles and churn out some right answers, essentially. So, you know, just real quick, I'll set it up here real quick, Dave. You know, in case anyone out there doesn't know, and that's okay too, you know, Warren Buffett, you know, kind of hung his hat on being a value investor. So, you know, kind of the complete opposite of what everyone's going for right now. You know, the quick return, the quick buck. You know, Warren Buffett was looking for essentially undervalued companies and investing in them long term. That's essentially how, you know, he became so famous. You know, I think also it's worth noting, you know, he wasn't just an investor. You know, he was a business person as well, and he made a lot of money loaning money out, especially back in 2008, 9, 10 time frame, when everyone was out of money. So he made a lot of money doing that. So, so yeah, you know, Dave, anything you want to get in here at the top?
Yeah, I think you know, Warren's approach is one that can be, so it's timeless, right? So it's one that can be applied to really any you know, given time period. It's a great framework, I think, to view the world through. So like you said earlier, you know, that emphasis on value, having that longer term outlook. So he's the opposite of reactive and, you know, you need to see results immediately kind of thing. Like he had a vision. He sought out companies, high quality companies with strong management teams. And it's kind of like he used some common sense. It feels like it's kind of like, hey, guess what? You know, Father's Day weekend just passed. July 4th's coming up. Guess what? People eat like a lot of barbecue food, and like they put a lot of ketchup on that barbecue food, and then, you know, on their hot dogs and burgers. Like, what about owning like a company that makes, you know, ketchup? What do you think about that?
Yeah.
So that kind of common sense, down to earth approach has served him well. And it's one that a lot of, I think, investors can follow his pattern.
Yep, for sure. So, yeah, just to give you kind of some of the highlights of some of the bigger investments he's made over time. You know, I think Coca-Cola, you know, probably in like the late 80s is probably when he started getting into that. And I believe he's still invested in it today.
Yes, he is.
So, you know, Coke is one of the most boring companies out there to invest in, honestly. And again, through all the years talking with people, teaching some classes, doing other things, Coke as a value stock came up almost all the time, and that is 100% because of Warren Buffett and the success that he had in that stock, in that company. And then probably one that might have been a little controversial at the time, but it was Apple. And Apple is, it's like if you turn on ESPN, they're probably going to be talking about the Cowboys or the Yankees. Yep. If you turned on, Fox Business, MSNBC, anyone talking about stocks, there was this raging debate about Apple and its multiple.
Yes.
Yep. And it wasn't an innovative company anymore. What are they going to do after the iPhone? Blah, blah, blah. And it went through a very long period of, kind of stagnation, if you will. And then Warren Buffett got involved and basically said, guys, this is a no-brainer. They're going to figure it out, and it's going to be, super profitable. And he was right on that one.
So Derek, I think you hit on another really important point there. One of, I think, Warren Buffett's superpowers was his ability to separate kind of the signal from the noise, I'll call it. There's so much chatter out there, and what is like the buy signal, or what is the sell signal, and what is just people just talking heads. And when he could, identify and see that clearly as, hey, guess what? Apple's going to be around here another several decades into the future, and they're, they have that leadership position. There's a lot of great minds working in that company. Like you said, they're going to figure it out one way or another. Mm-hmm. It might not be in the next 6 months, but he was confident they're going to retain their market position in the years to come.
Yep, for sure. So, that leads us into, so with a little background there, what can we use AI for in a practical sense right now? And that really leads us into the AI conversation. You can use AI to basically do anything that you want to right now, and whether it's like healthcare or manufacturing, we can feed in the data to AI to say, hey, identify these companies for me, using kind of Warren Buffett's framework, if you will. And I think it's obviously very new, this whole AI technology, and how to use it, but it really allows you to analyze a lot of stuff extremely, extremely quickly.
Yeah, and my take on the question of how to approach this is more like a couple things. Like two things. Like one of his business partners, like Charlie Munger, like mm-hmm. he had a philosophy where there were so many opportunities that came by his desk, and one of his tenets was he had something called a too hard pile. If something he was looking at, just he couldn't wrap his mind around it because it was either too complex or outside of his zone or beyond his level of understanding, he just wouldn't get involved in it.
Yep.
So the reason I'm kind of saying that is my thought pattern is almost instead of trying to figure out the nuances of all these technologies, how about honing in on the management teams that have really smart people working for them and trust their abilities to figure it out and how they would apply it to their business models. That kind of makes more sense to me in terms of how we should approach the unknown.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a perfect example of how it can help. And Tony and I did an AI episode a while back. And by the end, I think we were fairly secure in our jobs still at the end. It's all I have are sports analogies, so I'll give you another sports analogy. The NFL draft is fairly similar to picking stocks, right? You got your blue chips up front, and then as the draft goes on, you're basically taking flyers, right? AI has not ruined the NFL draft by being able to, just say, hey, give me the best player right now. I feel like the stocks in the stock market are fairly similar, just because there's such a human nature is very hard to predict. And there have been computer programs, dating back before we even got into this industry, trying to identify advantages, trying to identify, nuances that people might not be able to see. So in our mind, and in my mind, it's really just another tool right now to help you very efficiently, chew through some data to get to some answers that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's an art and a science component to all of this, right? So the technology can help you sort through and increase the probabilities and maybe eliminate some choices that should be off your screens.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I like the QB analogy. That seems like the hardest one to peg down, right? Like everything can line up perfectly, and the guy ends up being a dud anyway. So a lot of it, it depends on maybe the team they land on, like if it's the Browns, or the market cycle, right? And we'll talk about that later. But it's like, what is this market favoring? Where are we in the cycle? Are we expanding? Are we at a maturation? Is it declining? So that plays into it as well.
Yep, absolutely. And people have been charting things, since the beginning of time, really. We see all, especially on the internet nowadays. You get all the complex equations and what's that one thing, Fibonacci?
The Fibonacci
sequence or whatever. So all of this stuff has been around forever. But, I think, going through this, just evaluating an individual company is probably something that AI can do a really good job of right now. Give me, you find a stock that's done well and essentially say, hey, find me similar companies to, Apple in 2007 or something like that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, the other approach is like kind of keep it simple. Like, who are the market leaders? Like, who's in the dead center of this trend, right? We're looking for name brand market leaders, right? If AI is this major story, like NVIDIA has been in this leadership position and will likely have to be knocked out by someone else. So let's kind of ride that wave. Like, the likelihood they're going to be around for, the next decade or so is a higher probability than that unknown dark horse to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think? What do you think the future looks like here?
I think it's exciting in terms of what. I think there are things that we can't even comprehend right now.
Yeah.
I mean, like the low hanging fruit can, when you call in to make an appointment for your doctor, like you really don't need to talk to a person anymore at this point, right? There should be some kind of an AI agent that can do all the scheduling probably more accurately than a human can at this point. So all that low hanging stuff, you can just see the productivity gains. But I think the more exciting stuff is the things that we can't even think about.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's after you become an adult and you've been an adult for a while, I think you understand, even though you want things to stay the same, that things are changing and constantly evolving. And, the world that we're living in now is, completely different than when we were kids, right? And what our parents were dealing with.
Exactly. And, the other point that's exciting to me is I feel it will give you an opportunity to have more what I'll call disposable time. Right. So instead, where you had to devote 10 or 20 or 30 hours to this task during your average week, now you might have 5 more hours that you pick up during the week that are freed up that you can actually choose how you want to spend your time that week.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, I think in conclusion, it's something that we're going to be talking about for a while, something that we're going to need to monitor. There's a lot of real world applications that you can use AI for, rather than just making funny videos on the internet. And Dave hit the nail on the head. I think right now, it's just going to let you chew through data quickly, to help you make decisions more quickly and efficiently. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to give you all the answers to the test, and give you the next NVIDIA or the next Apple or the next whatever company you want to put in there. But it's definitely a tool that's going to be used, and ultimately, I think exactly what Dave said. We probably can't even really comprehend the way that it's going to affect the world. Maybe by the time our kids are in the real world, but definitely an exciting time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Derek, I wanted to circle back just to Mr. Buffett for a second here.
Heck yeah.
I had another kind of thought that hit me is, for as great as his track record was and his team's investing record was, keep in mind, the market's going to be the market. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is, if you look back on his track record, about a third of the years on an annual basis, he actually underperformed the S&P 500. So, and this was kind of extrapolate, especially if you look at cycles that were kind of bull markets where the growth stocks were leading the charge. There were a lot of people that were wondering if he lost his touch because he was kind of trailing significantly. But he, over time it proved that, hey, if you stick to my plan over the long term, you'll end up okay. But you do have to have patience, and you do have to have discipline to make sure you stay the course with what his vision looked like.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great point, and probably a good way to wrap things up here. The basics of investing are never going to change, really. I think that's an excellent point. You can have all the AI tools you want and a full staff of 20 CFAs, and you can pick out the perfect stock, and the next week COVID could happen and it could be down 40%.
Exactly.
You just don't really know. That's why Dave and Tony and I were always preaching kind of a long-term outlook, and because we see it every day. It is become increasingly more difficult to pick out those huge winners, because what can happen tomorrow, we just don't know.
That's exactly right. Come up with a strategy, stick to it, and have confidence you'll get to where you want to be.
Yep, absolutely. And let these tools work for you. It's also important to understand them, understand what they can do, and it's going to be a great addition, a great additional tool for investors out there for sure. So yeah, Dave, thanks so much for filling in this week. Really enjoyed it. If you guys out there have any questions, comments, or concerns, hit us up at info@swpconnect.com, and we'll talk to you next week.
The opinions expressed in the podcast are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any investment, legal, financial, or tax strategy. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. Please consult a qualified professional about your individual needs.